Years ago, I was on a trip to LA, and I went to see this friend who always seemed to get us into like the wildest situations. So when I got into LA, he said, hey, just come and meet me at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Which, if you just Google Los Angeles or like Los Angeles history, you would see that this is one of the most classic, iconic, exclusive hotels in probably all of the world. So he says, meet me there, but doesn't explain what we're gonna do. And I knew we weren't staying there. So anyways, we drive there, we park, we walk up to the hotel knowing we don't have a reservation and really don't have any business being there. And then we see him. And when we see him, he doesn't say what we're gonna do. He walks up to this really classy, classic, exclusive lounge or restaurant that's in the hotel and doesn't walk up to the host or hostess. Instead, he starts pushing on like side doors and windows. Like, what is happening? How much trouble are we about to get in? And he pushes and pushes until one finally opens, and then he looks back and says, hey, follow me. And I did. I mean, we just started walking through this restaurant. I don't know who's there. Like, am I gonna run into Beyonce? I'm not prepared for that. That's a really big deal. Like, I don't know, is Brad Pitt gonna be sitting there? Or maybe Childish Gambino is gonna be at the restaurant. Like, I can't not handle this. You know, it was one of those moments where I'm wondering, where am I? How is this happening? And how much trouble am I gonna get in? So we just keep walking and walking until finally somebody who works there stops us and simply asks, hey, do you have a table? To which, of course, we had no answer. So we just left as fast as we possibly could. And I'm hoping, please, I do not wanna be arrested in the middle of Los Angeles today, okay? That's not what I was going for on this trip. Well, that was a choice that I was very clearly a part of. Like, I definitely made the choice to maybe trespass. I'm not really sure if that was or not, but one thing I do know is that the people you hang around can have a big impact on your life. I mean, that's really what happened. I made the choice, but he definitely influenced it. I wouldn't have been there without him. So just think about this. What's the last bad decision you made? Or maybe I'll ask it this way. When's the last time you made a decision that got you into trouble? I'm not asking you to raise your hand or to share it out loud. Please don't do that, but just think about it. I mean, maybe you knew that it was wrong while you did it. Maybe you didn't. The point is, you got caught, got in trouble, got lectured. Maybe you got kicked off the team, you got exposed, you got punished. You just got embarrassed. That's kind of how I felt that time at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Or maybe you got detention. Whatever it was, you thought, how could this happen to me? But here's the deal. The common denominator in all of those choices was you. The reality is, most of the bad choices that we make and the negative consequences that we experience don't just happen to us, we happen to them. We aren't just innocent bystanders. We are participants, which is exactly what happened when I decided to follow him into the restaurant. But what's also true is that many of those decisions weren't made by ourselves. A lot of times, the reason we did what we did is because there were other influences involved. There were people that we cared about who were included. And whether the idea itself was innocent, malicious, playful, or ignorant, the people around us played a role. The truth is, there have been moments where we've lied, or we've tried something, or we've gossiped about someone, or we acted nice to someone, or acted mean to someone, or we pretended to like something, or we pretended to hate something, or we did something good, or did something bad. And we wouldn't have done it if it hadn't been for the people who were next to us. In other words, friends have a direct impact on us. Not just in the little things of life, but in some really big areas too. And not just right now, they also have an impact on our future. Ultimately, your friends will have a big influence on your quality of life now and where your life ends up later. And the closer the friend, the more influence they have. We've all heard stories of people who, at a young age, seemed to be heading in a positive direction in life. Then something happened and things began to go downhill. What's interesting is that these stories tend to always go the same way. The person began to surround themselves with people who pulled them in the wrong direction. We know these stories about other people, and we also know that the same thing can happen to any of us. Here's what's interesting. When it comes to most of our major decisions, we put a lot of thought into them. We think about the classes we take, or whether or not we want to go to college, or where we may want to live, or who we want to like, or who we date. We think about it, pray about it, maybe even ask for advice about it. But when it comes to who we allow into our inner circle, we don't always think much about it. Instead of being proactive, we tend to be reactive. And here's the bad news. Friends can pull us down. But here's the good news. They can also pull us up. Some of you become better students, better athletes, better people because of your friends. They've encouraged you to try things you wouldn't normally do, and those things have helped you improve as a person. Friends are a big deal. There's no doubt about that. So let's talk about how to be a friend and how to maintain the right types of friendships that are better for you in the long run. Okay, so there's this book in the Old Testament of the Bible called Proverbs that speaks to the importance of deciding which friends that you'll let influence your decisions. This book has some of the best advice that you'll ever hear on just about any topic. A guy named Solomon is credited for writing most of it, and he was the king of Israel during a really prosperous time. Not only that, next to Jesus, he was considered the wisest person who ever lived, which means that we may have something to learn from him and his advice when it comes to friends. Here's what he said. The righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. Okay, let's define the word righteous. It simply means people who do the right thing. It's about being a good decision maker, a wise decision maker. It's about people who make choices that take their future and the best interests of others into account. If we want to be right decision makers who do what's best for our future, Solomon says we need to choose our friends carefully. Right decision makers pay attention to who their friends are because they know that they need friends who are just as invested in their future as they are. They need friends who will help them stay on the right course. Okay, now, this doesn't mean that if you have a friend who doesn't always make the best decisions, you should like drop kick them out of your life. I'm just saying that you should take a look at the people who you are closest to and who you spend the most time with. And then ask yourself, are they leading me to a future that I'm proud of or to a future that I don't want any part of? I understand that in high school, you can't always choose the kind of people who are around you. You can't control who has the same work schedule, lunch period, or sports interests as you. Or you may be thinking, I'm not on a team, and the people I work with and even in my lunch period don't even acknowledge that I'm alive. You may even say that you don't have any friends. I'm so sorry. Trust me, I've been there. And there's nothing easy about that. And while that may be true right now, and it may be awful right now, it won't always be this way. And the decisions that you make right now when it comes to friends, they can save you from a lot of potential pain in the future. That's because, like I said earlier, friends are a big deal. So, when you're making decisions about who your friends will be, it's really important to be intentional. That's why Solomon told us to choose them carefully in the verse that we looked at. Now, remember how Solomon ends that verse. Solomon ends the verse by saying this, "But the way of the wicked leads them astray." This is basically just people who are the opposite of right decision makers. Now, when we hear the word wicked, we may think of all sorts of different things, but what Solomon meant was someone who's done something wrong. They don't think about how their decisions will impact their future or the people around them. They think about themselves, and they think about right now. They don't have your future or your best interest in mind. When Solomon says that it leads them astray, he's basically referring to trouble. That's why you may have a friend who's a good person and a ton of fun to be around, but you find yourself getting into trouble when you're with them. Your ability to make good decisions with them tends to go down. Or maybe you haven't got busted yet, but if you were caught doing some of the things you did together, it would be trouble, maybe serious trouble. This is why I don't think we should ask the question, is this friend good or bad? Instead, I think we should ask, is this friend a good influence on my life right now? If the answer is no, it doesn't mean it'll be like that forever. There's hope for everyone to get on the right track. And it doesn't mean you'll never interact with them. It just means that you change the amount of influence you give them in your life. Think of it this way. These circles represent how close your friends are or are not to you. You're somewhere here in the middle. The closer to the middle, the closer to you as a friend. So this inner circle right here, it represents the people who have the most influence in your life. These are your best friends, those who are closest to you, you know what I mean. And as you build your closest friendships moving forward, I want you to look for people who influence you in a positive and healthy way. Put those people closest to the bullseye. And if someone doesn't influence you in a positive way, you can still see them or talk to them. You should care about them and pray for them, but you want the best influences to be closest to the bullseye. In fact, Jesus had the same kind of pattern with his own friendships. When you read the New Testament, you see that he had levels of influence among his friends and followers. He had a huge crowd that followed him, and they were probably somewhere out here, and then he had 12 disciples that he spent a lot of time with. They were definitely closer to the middle. These people were pretty tight with him. And he had 3 disciples that he was closest to. they were in the middle. Think of it this way. The friends you choose impact the future you will have. Now again, some of you may be thinking, I don't even have someone to put on the whiteboard right now. I get it. And like I said, I've been there. The truth is, friendships, they'll come and go throughout the course of your life. Things will change and there will be seasons of unknown. But one day, you will have friends. Things won't always look the way they do now. The truth is the same for all of us. If we want great friendships either today or in one day in the future, then we need to be friends with people who care about our future and influence us in a positive way. Great friendships start with great people. So while you're waiting, it's a great time for you to learn how to become a great friend. As you focus on your character, you'll grow into a person who will be a great influence on the people in your inner circle. Now, there's a few things that I'd love for you to do in light of what we've been talking about. First, pray for great friends. In another verse from Proverbs, Solomon says this, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." This just means the right kind of friends make us better. They sharpen us. But the right kind of friend doesn't mean a friend who is exactly like us. This is really important. In fact, it's good to be friends with people who think differently and look differently than you. People who see the world differently from us, who have a different experience in the world, they have something to teach us. What matters most isn't that you share everything in common. What matters is that you share the right things in common. Next, ask yourself important questions about your friends. In fact, you can ask these questions about yourself while you're at it. The reason we do this is so that we can become more intentional about who we let influence us. Ask questions like, can I count on them to be right decision makers? Do they make not just right, but wise decisions? Are they always caught up in drama? Be honest. Do they seem to constantly be living in the fallout of bad decisions? Do they have your best interest in mind? Do they treat other people well? Depending on how you answer those questions, there may be friends that you need to take a couple of steps back from. If you're feeling this, we're gonna talk about how to do this next time. There may even be friends that you need to take a couple of steps toward. But whatever it is, you need to be the one who decides what happens next. Don't be passive, be intentional. The friends you choose impact the future you'll have. I believe that God wants us to have life-giving, sharpening friendships. Friendships where we can see God at work in the relationship. Invite God into your journey of building great friendships and ask God to help you be a great friend to others. Being and having a good friend is good for you right now and in the future. Just remember that this doesn't happen overnight. These kind of friendships take work, but believe me, the work is worth it.